Mike Dell's World 424 for the 18th of November, 2025.
In a world created by Mike Dell, I guess you would call it Mike Dell's World.
And thank you, Mark. Those little stingers, I was digging around in my hard drive and found those from Mark Yoshimoto Nemkov, who is a voiceover artist, and every once in a while he'll send me a file with a bunch of stingers and promos and crap for stuff I'm doing while he's warming up his vocal cords. So anyway, kind of fun stuff. And today I wanted to talk about heating with wood. Now, currently, I don't do that right now, but growing up, everybody in my family, extended family, heated with wood. And one of the things that we used to do a lot is have big group wood cutting parties, at least 2 or 3 times in the fall or late summer. We would go out to some property that my uncle has that just happened to have an oil well on it. And when they clear cut for the oil well, they stacked up all the wood over in one side, and we'd go out there and cut that up, split it, had a little splitter, I don't know what it was, probably an 8-horse or 10-horse log splitter. And, we had vans and trailers and pickup trucks, and we'd fill up all the different vehicles that were brought. And, there'd be 8 or 10 of us out there cutting, hauling, stacking, loading. And then we'd take it over at my grandparents' house and a couple of different uncles and our house. And we'd put up an awful lot of wood, but it took a lot of wood to heat. When I was a kid, I don't remember the furnace ever running. Back in the day, we had an oil furnace, and like I said, I'm sure it did, but I just don't remember it. I just remember, fill the wood box. That was my chore every day, is go down in the basement. Half our basement was wood storage. I go down in the basement and haul wood up to this giant box we had in the kitchen, and I'd fill the wood box. Took 3 or 4 trips, maybe 5 armloads of wood to fill up the wood box, but that was my job. But, all through, I don't know, probably 10 years old till I moved out, was fill the wood box. Ironically, after I moved out, my folks replaced the oil burner with a natural gas furnace, and the wood stove was there for supplementary heat instead of primary heat. But yeah, we had 2 wood stoves. We had one up in the living room that ran all the time. And then we had another one down in the basement that on the other side, away from the wood storage side of the basement, had a little office, ham shack, a den, I don't know what you call it, but a room that was finished off with carpet and everything, and that had a wood stove in it as well. And we'd fire that up whenever we were going to have some activities down there, or on extremely cold nights. When it got below 0, we'd go fire up the one downstairs, and that would help heat the house. But one thing I remember as a kid is either I had to leave my bedroom door open because it was at the other end of the house from the wood stove, or I would put a big old rock. I had a rock that was probably, a foot long and, half a foot high. It was, kind of a oval-shaped, egg-shaped rock that I would set on top of the wood stove, and then I would wrap it in a newspaper, with 3 or 4 sheets of newspaper, wrap it up so it wasn't too ridiculously hot, and I would put that in the foot of my bed to keep warm. I know that sounds crazy. That was in the 70s and 80s. So, we had the technology to heat differently, but that worked pretty good. I had that rock and, because the bedrooms would get cold. And I like to keep my door closed. But, if I left my door open, it was fine. And, no big deal. But, yeah, heating with wood, that was a lot of work. We had chainsaws to maintain, the splitter, we had to have vehicles and trailers to haul it. I remember my uncle and my dad bought a 1941 Ford flatbed truck. It was like a, 2.5 ton or 2 ton, or I don't know what it was, but it was a 1941 Ford truck. So right there before World War II. And it had a flathead V8 in it and a stick shift with a 2-speed rear end, non-synchro. So it was, kind of hard to drive. And they put a dump cylinder on it. Dad and Jerry flew down to Nashville, Tennessee in a Cherokee 6 to pick up this dump mechanism, the cylinder and the reservoir and all the whole system to make it a dump truck. So we had this 1941 Ford dump truck, and we'd fill that sucker all the way up, and a couple loads here, a couple loads there, and everybody had their wood for the season. But that old truck, I was probably 11 or 12 years old, and Dad and Jerry bet each other that I couldn't drive that truck. And so here I am, 11 years old, over at the oil well, which is off of Garfield Road, south of town, and drove all the way over to Long Lake with it. And I did it. I stalled it the first time, but I'd been in that truck enough that I knew, what everything sounded like and, how it all worked. And I figured it out. But I got that truck all the way out to Long Lake from there. So don't do that anymore. But I guess the farm exemption might have applied. I don't know. But, I drove it at an early age. We had a 1964 VW Beetle that used to drive around the back field and, in the woods and whatnot. And, I don't remember how old I was, but I drove that quite a bit before I even got to driver's ed. And it was weird in driver's ed, all the cars were automatics. I've seen automatics, but I never driven one. But driver's ed was easy, and I don't think I had a automatic vehicle until a long time into when I was in the Air Force. We got an old Oldsmobile that had the automatic in it, but every time I drove that car, it caught on fire. It's a long story, but back to the heating with wood. It's a lost art. I'm sure people still do it. A lot of them now use those pellet stoves. I thought about getting something like that. We have a wood fireplace here, at my current house, and we use it every once in a while, but it's not a heating thing. It's just an ambiance thing because really it doesn't put out all that much heat. I guess it could, but, we don't stoke it up too much and, just have it there for ambiance in the living room or when it's really cold out, it's kind of nice to fire that up because I live in an old log cabin, and in the living room portion of the cabin, there's no insulation. The logs are pretty good insulation, don't get me wrong, but it does stay a bit cooler in that room than it does in the rest of the house. Excuse me, I'm having my morning coffee. I'm back on real time here. So today's the 18th in the morning, and just figured I'd record before I start actually working. By the way, yesterday's episode was from 2011, and there was an ad in there for the Leonard Peikoff podcast, and I guess he no longer does that. But yeah, back in 2011, he was an advertiser, and he advertised on my show. He did, as I remember it, he did a lot of commentary about Ayn Rand and her writings and philosophy and whatnot. And, I listened to a few of them. They were interesting, but I guess he's no longer doing that. Chris, one of the guys that one of your fellow listeners, he pointed out that his website's still there, but the last episode was like 9 years ago or something like that. So, yeah, sorry I didn't edit that ad out of my rerun from yesterday, but that's all right. I don't plan on doing any more reruns. I did find out, though, that some of my episodes are misposted. Some of the really older ones are like one episode off. I don't know how that happened. I'm not going to bother fixing it. Well, why bother? You guys don't go all the way back to the old episodes anyway, I wouldn't think. I mean, if you do, more power to you. Just know that at some point around the 150s and in that area, they're one episode off. So the post matches the episode from the time before or something like that. I don't know. Adventures in podcasting. I'm always experimenting with technology. In fact, right now I'm running a PowerPress beta. That's the software I use on my website to create the RSS feed that you guys get this podcast on. And we're developing a new version of it that has some substantial changes. Nothing you guys will notice, but some substantial under the hood changes. Well, you would maybe notice it if you used as I call it, a modern podcast app instead of the legacy podcast apps. You can find those over at newpodcastapps.com. That's part of the Podcasting 2.0 Podcast Index project. And there's some extra features. In fact, if you go to my website, MikeDell.com, you'll see down the side of the website the funding tag. You can buy me a coffee. Or if you're streaming Bitcoin, you can stream Bitcoin to me. I don't push that all the time. It's experimental. But, and then podcasts I like, it's called Podroll. Back in the day, there used to be a thing called Blogroll, where, on a blog, they would have links to other blogs that were of interest to the person writing the blog. But we did the same thing with Podroll. And so I've got a few shows there that I listen to. I don't know. They're just random ones, but that's all part of that same project. But with one of those modern podcast apps, one I prefer is Cast-O-Matic. I like that one because you can do playlists. But I got the hiccups now. Damn coffee. Anyway, I'm going to get out of here and get this published so that I can go on about my day. I hope everybody's having a great day, and we'll catch you tomorrow.